over 70% of the diseases that we see in today's society are related to diet. 70%. Diabetes, hypertension, some forms of cancer. Within our Black community, I hear a lot of gout. Right now, we're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia having a nutrition connection. And so, if diet caused it, diet needs to be part of the solution.
Hello, and welcome to Your Health Matters. I am your host, Vivian Natural Ayok, pharmacist, certified diabetes care and education specialist, and founder of Surrogate. I am super excited about this episode today because we're going to be talking about diabetes and food, the role that a dietitian plays as part of the care team. To talk about this today, I have a really wonderful guest by the name of Ms. Cordialis Msora-Kasago. And Ms. Cordialis, welcome to Your Health Matters.
Thank you so much for having me, Vivian. I am excited to be here to talk about food, nutrition, and everything in between.
I know even before we started, I was already laughing and cracking up because this is going to be fun. Usually, this is where I stop and I read a really long bio, but we're going to do things different today. So I'm going to channel my Nigerian auntie. So Auntie Vivian is taking over now, no longer diabetes educator Vivian. And Auntie Vivian wants to know, you came to America. Of all the professions, doctor, no. Nurse, no. Pharmacist, accountant, lawyer, mba. And you landed on nutrition. Please explain that one to me and all the other million aunties who are going to be listening to this wondering, how does someone pick nutrition as a profession and why that's so important? So please share with our audience your story and what you do for a living.
Thank you. You know what? It's so funny you start out that way because I was 7 years old, or maybe I was 9. I don't quite remember when I decided that I wanted to be a dietitian. And so there was no auntie, no mother, no father that could tell me no because I was a child and they kept thinking, she'll change her mind. She'll change her mind. Then when I got to college, my mother was like, you're serious. And I'm like, yes, I'm definitely serious. This is what I'm doing. My mother tried to change my mind. She told me, I know I'll never forget this. She's like, which in Shona means that piece of fatty meat that you are saying don't eat is the very piece of meat that somebody's opening the lid and saying, where's that fatty piece of meat? Because that's the one that I want. So it was a challenge. But I think that my passion came out. I wanted to study food because I love food. It just followed me. So ever since I was a young person, this has always been what I wanted to do. And here I am, so no doctor, no pharmacist, no lawyer, just a dietitian, loving it.
And you have been amazing. And for our listeners, I have actually worked with Cordialis in my personal life, and you have done such an amazing thing for me and my family. I actually have my kids enjoying burgers made out of mushrooms. It is amazing, and they love it. So I am so happy you decided to do this because you are making a huge difference for the people that you encounter. So let's go back to the basics, okay? You talked about nutrition. We hear this throw around nutritionist and a registered dietitian. What's the difference? And for all our listeners who are trying to figure out what's the difference between a nutritionist and a registered dietitian, is there even any difference between the two?
There is a difference between the two. And one thing that I want people to understand is that every dietitian is a nutritionist, but not every nutritionist is a dietitian. So I just lost everybody there. I get it. But here's what I mean, right? In many parts of the world, the term nutritionist has no credential associated with it. Anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. In fact, many of the nutritionists that you find online don't have that educational backing for what they call themselves. It's somebody who lost weight and said, "This is what I did to lose weight. You can do it too. I'm a nutritionist." And that's how they come up with that title. It's not a protected title, meaning that anybody can utilize that regardless of their educational training. Now, in order for you to be a dietitian, you need in most countries a minimum of a bachelor's degree. And that's in most countries. In the United States, it's going to be a master's degree pretty soon. And you need that educational backing. You also need to do like a practical training or an internship, or in some parts of the world, we call it an attachment. I did one for 9 months before taking a credentialing exam. And every 5 years, I have to take courses that help me keep on top of all the research that's going on in nutrition. Because at the end of the day, nutrition is a science. It's not an opinion. It's not, I did this, therefore do it too. It's a science. And so, in order for me to keep up with the research and know what's going on, I have to keep up my credential. And so, that's why every dietitian is a nutritionist, because we really have that backing. We understand the science that's behind it. But also, I would be amiss if I didn't mention that there are some people that might not be dietitians, but nutritionists that have degrees, PhDs as well, you know. So it's just that they didn't take the credentialing exam or do that whole process. So the message to the audience is, so when you are working or looking to work with someone, ask them, what's your training in this? Ask to see their credentials. And if you're working with a registered dietitian, they can give you a certification that shows you that they are credentialed. So make sure you always look for those credentials.
Makes a big difference, doesn't it? Right? A 2 weeks program on Google and a very professional who actually needs to meet certain credentials every year, that makes a big difference, right?
It makes a very big difference. I always say, you know, would you go to a doctor who did a 2 week course? And nutrition is a science, it's a medical science. Don't you want your doctor to have that credential as well?
Makes sense. And another thing too that has come up is people try to understand the benefits. We're talking about diabetes today, and what are the benefits of just in general, even before we get to diabetes, even of seeing a registered dietitian as part of your care team? What are some of the general things people should expect as benefits of seeing one?
Viv, the thing about it is, right now, I think it's over 70% of the diseases that we see in today's society are related to diet. 70%. Diabetes, hypertension, some forms of cancer. Within our Black community, I hear a lot of gout. Right now, we're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia having a nutrition connection. And so, if diet caused it, diet needs to be part of the solution. But everybody eats, so everybody thinks they're the expert. I'm especially trained to understand what's going on with your body by looking at the labs that you do with your doctor, by looking at your diet, and even your lifestyle to make sure that you are optimizing or helping your body utilize the nutrients so that it can function well. A lot of the diseases that we see right now are related to not getting enough of the nutrients that help increase your body's ability to function. But my role is to help you create that individualized diet based on what you like to eat, how you prefer to eat them, the foods that you can access, and show you how you can combine them, how you can cook them, and give you that skill so you can improve your health. That's the role of a dietitian. You know, it is looking at the whole person and helping you improve your health as a whole individual.
I love that. I truly love what you're saying. And for me personally, I said, I haven't worked with you even for a brief moment. It did make me think about the food I eat, what I prepare for my kids, how we approach nutrition as a family. So it's made a huge difference. My mom was just here visiting from Nigeria, and she was just wondering, why are you making so many changes to our regular recipes? Like, what's going on here? And I'm sure after she listens to this podcast, she'll be like, aha, I know who's responsible.
That's
She's gonna
funny.
go, but in a good way. I mean, she was quite impressed. Not all of it was like, oh boy, but really good changes, things she never even thought about. And now she's rethinking a lot of the things that we did and just took it for granted, but how that might be impacting our health. So for all our listeners who are from different cultural backgrounds that, are probably wondering, why do you need to sit with someone and talk about food? It's already a challenge, Food should be enjoyed. Food is something that should be experienced with family. We're talking about diabetes here. Now, why is that important? And explain to everybody else who's not used to, and even here in DC, I practice in DC. Not everyone has had the opportunity to sit down with a registered dietitian, really analyze their food. So, talk about what people should expect as part of that process when they meet a dietitian. What does that look like? How does that interview usually go? And what do you work with them as a part of the process of improving their health?
Okay, I'm going to walk you through how I interact with new people that I'm working with, right? My role is to be your food cheerleader. That's what I am. Okay, I love food. And so I want you to love food too. And I want you to eat it. You kind of touched upon culture. I heard you mention the word culture in there. And to me, culture is everything. Culture is who I am. I am a Zimbabwean girl. And as a Zimbabwean girl, I'm nothing without my sadza and mubora and matemba and amaklimbi, right? And so if you take that away from me, you take away who I am. And I understand that about everybody that I meet, right? So one of the first things that I do is I need to understand who you are. What are the foods that make Vivian uniquely Vivian? And how do you eat them and how do you work with them? And depending on which circumstance we're meeting, some people I meet as part of a larger group. Sometimes it's a course that you're taking and I'm teaching you those skills. Sometimes it's a one-on-one. If I'm working with you one-on-one, before we even meet, I ask you to keep what we call a food diary for 3 days. I say at least one of those days must be a weekend because you know what happens on the weekend, right? That's when we eat all the party jollof and everything, everything comes out, right? So I say, and then on Monday we start the diet again. So I
Weekends don't count, right?
well, yeah,
Weekends
of course,
don't count.
weekends don't count. So I want a glimpse into your life, right? I actually tell my clients, literally invite me to dinner, invite me for breakfast, invite me for lunch. How do you do that? I utilize an app in which you're taking pictures of everything that you're eating. Even if you're drinking a glass of water, I want to see that glass of water because there are elements of food that you might not be thinking of, but I am looking at and I'm looking for. So by looking at that right before I meet you, I'm able to then guide you and create a personalized process just specifically for you. Now, when we meet, it's a conversation, just like we're having right now. Of course, we have pictures. I might ask you what's going on in there. I also sometimes will write that in the app. Can you tell me what this is? Can you tell me how much of it you ate? Oh, how often did you eat? And sometimes when people don't send me pictures, I'm like, hey, because I want to see that. So it is working from that standpoint. And then me understanding the disease processes, what's happening with your body. When you have diabetes, your body is not able to utilize the glucose that the food is coming through. So now I'm translating what's happening with your body to the food that you're putting on your plate. And I'm helping you create a customized plate so that your body can optimize or utilize the food for fuel. Because let's face it, we need food, we need fuel, right? And so I help you navigate through that, whether it is for diabetes, whether it is for high blood pressure, or you're going through a medical process and you need nutrition. That's my role, to help you translate what's going on with medicine and what your doctor is saying into nutrition, because nutrition touches every single disease process. I don't care what it is. Nutrition touches it. And my role is to make sure that you are giving your body everything that it needs.
Amen, sister. Amen to that. I knew you were the perfect person for this conversation. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of the time in our diabetes education program, when we have someone refer to the program, there's always a lot of anxiety. The first things that always come up is food. but there is a lot of anxiety and fear and anger because they think you're about to take something from them. So what has been your experience? I know we throw it around diet, but a lot of people, that doesn't sound right. That just means taking away everything they love, and you're going to put them on something that tastes like cardboard. So how do you make people comfortable?
Nowadays, in this world of ours, diet has become this bad word that we associate with restriction and associate with bad things. But when we start to really think about the nature of the word, it's a way of eating. That's what a diet is. I personally, when I work with people, try as much as possible to avoid the word diet because of that negative connotation. Part of it is I have to break down those connotations and those preconceived notions of what a diet is. And so I prefer to call it an eating pattern. I am not the food police. One of the things that I enjoy doing when working with people, regardless of their health situation, is to focus on abundance. What can you have? I don't believe in taking away food, but what I believe in is adding food. What? The dietitian is saying eat more, but yes, because the diseases of diet and lifestyle are not so much about what we're eating. I think, yes, that matters, but more so, it's what we are not eating that is getting us in the situation. And then from there, we start the process of what I call crowding out. When you start by adding more of the foods that you and I are having a discussion about adding, and then to create balance. That's what it's about. It's about creating balance. It's not about taking food away. I want for a change for us to say, this is good. Let's eat more of this, and crowd out the foods that we know are higher in the fat that clogs up our arteries, are higher in the sugars that make our blood sugars go up, right? And give our bodies more of the nutrients that it needs to thrive. Let's crowd in the good stuff and crowd out some of those things that we need to reduce.
Awesome. People seem to think that type 2 diabetes, especially, is because people just cannot control themselves. That's one of the misconceptions. But when you actually take time and look at what people are eating, they're not eating enough of the right food because there's so much confusion as to what to eat, what not to eat. But I get your point, and I'm happy you made it that sometimes people are just not eating enough. Thank you for that. Another thing too that comes up to it's about understanding culture and understanding different types of food and why certain things are important to people. I think there was an article I read about someone trying to make changes to our favorite jollof rice. I think they were thinking of quinoa or cauliflower. Girl, don't laugh because it was not funny.
I remember the call.
I am still annoyed. I mean, I'm laughing now, but I'm really not laughing. And I remember having this really visceral reaction. I just dialed your number. And for our listeners who don't know, we're 5 hours apart. Okay. I didn't even care what time it was in California. I just dialed your number because I needed someone to help me understand this mess. And what was also annoying about it was that you could tell from the little I could read was this was someone who had no connection to the culture, probably didn't even understand what this food means to someone like from Nigeria or Ghana. I mean, it's not a good party if you don't have jollof rice. In all honesty, I really felt like going home and eating jollof rice just in opposition, like, take it.
Let me show you what this is, right? This is jollof, not cauliflower, jollof, you know?
So my point is, how do you navigate that? How do you, when you meet with clients that you probably are not familiar with the foods that they're eating, that humility to say, I don't understand. I'm coming from a place where I probably never tried that, but talk to me so that we build trust and I can still guide you to making sure that whatever you're doing actually nourish your body and improve your health.
I get that a lot, Vivian. We laugh about it, but I think for many people that is the experience. People become afraid, because I know what it is to a Niger girl to eat her jollof. I know that. And I can't imagine, it's like the challenge that we have is we need more diversity, not only in nutrition, but throughout healthcare. because people don't understand the culture. 3% of dietitians are Black. 3%. Okay. And so when you look at the rates of disease and the people that are suffering from those, you see that there's a big disproportionate allocation of people that can do that. So we need more people that are able to understand what that food means to a culture. In healthcare, I think part of what I do is help people stop being afraid. And you read Dr. Google, Dr. Google
I
says,
like you, Dr.
don't eat this.
Google.
Yeah, we all know Dr. Google because we all consult Dr. Google. But don't trust Dr. Google, right? But Dr. Google is saying, don't eat this. Along comes this dietitian. And honestly, some physicians are saying, don't eat it, right? I've had people say to me, don't eat anything white. I was told not to eat anything white. Now you're telling me I can have rice and I can even have white rice, but people don't understand that. And part of it is honestly helping people trust. I have to help people trust me. Trust the process is what I often tell people. Let's trust the process. Let's work through these things together and break down those barriers. But to answer your question, I have the privilege of being a passionate food taster, not tester. I will go to Italy and eat Italian food. I go to Rwanda and say, what are you eating? One of my favorite things to do when I'm in a new city is to say, where do the locals eat, and eat the local food, because that's just me. I'm passionate about that. So I've had the privilege of learning of food around the country. But still, I have people from cultures that I'm not familiar with. And the number one thing that we can do as healthcare providers is ask and listen. And to understand too that just because you're Cameroonian, you're Zambian, you're South African, does not mean that you eat the same food. Tell me what this is. Tell me how you cooked it. Tell me what ingredients you used. So to answer your question, Vivian, I think the biggest thing is I can't know it all. You are the expert. You're the expert of what you eat. You're the expert of what you like to eat, right? Of your taste buds.
Correct.
You're the expert. My goal is to help you be the best expert that you can by sharing that knowledge. So, and how do I do that? By asking. And then we work together to develop goals. Goals are very important. If we don't set that goal, then it's only we just had a good conversation.
Thank you, Cordialis. I mean, I'm sure our listeners are taking notes. I want to go through some common things that might come up during appointments. And I think one that comes up a lot is people say they cannot afford healthy foods. Has that come up for you a lot in your appointments where people talk about healthy food is expensive, but then not everyone have the same definition of what healthy food is?
Yeah, I think we get that a lot. Healthy food is expensive, and I can see and I can understand where people are coming from. And part of the discussion is access. Some people just don't have access to that healthy food. And so when you finally are able to get a bundle of spinach or a packet of apples, the price is higher. It's cheaper sometimes for individuals to go buy a Happy Meal than it is to buy some fresh fruit, depending on where you live. So I think it's important that we recognize that. Healthy means balanced, and it is possible to have a well balanced, healthy diet that nourishes your body and feeds your soul on a budget. Some of the healthiest foods that are so underutilized and underrecognized are beans. I'm like, eat as many beans as you can because they're so healthy and they're so good for you. And when we talk about diabetes, they actually help regulate your blood sugars much better than a lot of the other foods that may be higher in that nutrient. Everybody talks about protein, right? And so including those. And when we look at the price point of beans, a little goes a long way. And so many times, I think what we have been accustomed to believe is that a healthy diet is one that includes expensive foods. And I think because when we start to look at, people throw around the term, which I absolutely hate, superfood. When we look at what the superfoods are, very rarely do you see people talk about beans or collard greens or just your whole grain brown rice, But basically, the term superfood is a marketing term. So we want to make sure that we take that into consideration. Color is an indication of nutrition. The more colorful your plate, the better. So if you can't afford to buy a lot of foods, just go for the simplest things. It is the whole food that we're looking for. What do I mean by whole food? It is food as close as possible to its natural state. Healthy food is available and achievable. Sometimes we just have to show you how.
Awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned food closest to its natural form because I do not want anyone grabbing, what's that cereal? Is it Fruit Loops with all the colors in it and go, yay?
You know what? I used to say to my kids, if it changes the color of your milk, think twice.
There you go. Another one that comes up too is the fact that people say, hey, I was brought up to always finish everything on my plate.
Mm.
Talk about that. When do we just say, this is enough? You don't have to keep going just because it's there.
That's a good one. I'm from the Clean Your Plate Club. That's how I was raised. We don't waste food. Other people don't have food, so therefore eat everything on your plate. And it's conditioning. I'm going to start off by pleading to all the parents out there. Stop it. Stop making your children clean up their plates. Rather, teach them how to serve portions that they can finish. I don't think I said that loud enough. Teach them how to serve portions that they can finish. Many times, as parents, we are putting the food on the plate for them and saying, here, sit down and eat your food. But our body has this natural way of saying, I'm full. If you've ever fed a baby, right, and you're trying to give a baby food, once the baby is done, they're like, I'm done. No matter what you do, baby is not going to open their mouth. If anything, they're going to start crying. That right there is biology at work. That is the body saying, we're done, we're stopping, we're done. But as we grow up, we are taught to shut down the way the body works and forced to start thinking in another way in which we must finish all the plates. Listen to your body's cue. Save those leftovers for later. One of the things that I say is if you're at a restaurant and here's the thing, if you were taught to finish all the food on your plate, when you get a plate and it's full of food, you're going to eat everything because that's how you've been accustomed to. But maybe on another day, we should talk about mindful eating and what that means. But for right now, I think the biggest thing is to really pay attention. Listen to your body's cues because your body tells you what it needs. And your body says, I'm done, I'm full. But we all know that food was too good. I'm going back for more plantain. Not because we need it or because we're hungry, but because it's there. So I think that it's a larger conversation, but for right now, I think it's important that people understand that it's okay not to clean up your plate.
Thank you. Oh, we're going to have you come back. We just started when it has to do with nutrition. So you are going to be a regular on this podcast. So best practices, we always like to end things on a positive note. Talk about what would you want to leave our audience or listeners with in terms of family, doing things together, community resources, reminder, some positive things that they can take away and begin to implement today. What are some tips and advice you want to leave our listeners with? One or two things.
I love that you said family because so many people living with diabetes isolated. Some people feel ashamed. Some people feel depressed because of their diagnosis. But the first thing is, you're not alone. There are others that are going through the same thing and saying, help me. Tell me what's working for you. How do we navigate this system together? And sometimes there is this sense of comfort that comes from somebody saying, me too. I work with Sarogi, and I know that's one of the things that you're working on, building that community. That's very important. And then the second thing is about family. I'm going to say something that might be shocking to many people, but when it comes to food and nutrition and diabetes, you don't have to eat a diet that's different from what your family is eating. The same things that your family eats are the same things that you can eat as a person with diabetes. Family is extremely important. Family is that first connection point. Family is that social aspect of life that we live for. So engage your family and allow them to help you through the process, and also through the process, also educate them. I picked up a lot of things from my mother. My mother picked up different things from her mother. I'm probably passing those things unknowingly to my daughter because it's just generational. You are the first one to break that chain. You change the whole transformation, the whole trajectory of the rest of your family. And food is culture. I'm going to end on that, right? Food is culture. Food is love. Food is comfort. Food is health. Food is family, especially when it comes to health and healing. Keep that family tight.
Wow. Thank you. For all our listeners, I hope you're no longer scared of meeting with a registered dietitian. I hope that if you have the opportunity to do so, you take it. And if you've been thinking about it, you're struggling with food, ask for that referral from your primary care doctor. It can make a big difference in you beginning to understand food and be more comfortable and feel empowered that you can do things right, not just for yourself, but for your family as well. So, Ms. Cordialis, thank you so much. I know we're going to have you come back. We'll talk about keto, we'll talk proteins, carbs, all the good stuff.
She said the K word.
Oh,
No, but
so
let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Super grateful. And before we end, as a matter of fact, how can people who want to reach you, how can they get in touch with Ms. Cordialis?
You can definitely find me on Instagram at Maitano, Maitano Cares. Maitano Cares, Maitano Cares. And I'm also on the same website, maitanocares.com. You can also find me there.
Awesome. And we're going to include this as part of the notes for this podcast as well. So thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Perfect way to end this particular episode. If you like the show, listeners, you know what to do at this point. Send us feedback, like it, share it with friends and family. Go on to Surrogate Health for more information. And until next time, remember your health matters.